Did you work at McDonald's or Burger King before this? The question sliced through the low hum of the Seahawk Tavern like a stray bullet. Laughter erupted from 3 Navy SEALs perched at the mahogany bar, the kind of laughter that thrives on arrogance and alcohol. Emma Wells, a blonde waitress with her hair twisted into a neat bun, didn't flinch. She simply balanced the tray of beers in her hands and set them down with the precision of someone defusing a bomb. Each glass landed exactly where it belonged. Silent, perfect, deliberate. Before we get started, be sure to subscribe to Courage and Honor, Veterans TV, so you never miss these fascinating tales of courage. And let us know in the comments where you're watching today. Blake "Tank" Brooks, muscles stretching the seams of his camouflage t-shirt, leaned back on his stool and smirked. "Look at her," he said, his voice carrying the weight of someone too used to command. Probably learned that move from a YouTube tutorial on how to serve like a pro. His tone was half joke, half dare, the kind of challenge born in men who'd been told too many times they were untouchable. Emma didn't rise to it. Her eyes stayed fixed on the wooden bar top, on the condensation rings that told stories of nights just like this one. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm, measured, and strangely steady. "Fallujah, 2014. The laughter cut out instantly. The youngest of the 3, Tyler Mills, barely 25 and still carrying the raw energy of a man new to combat, let out a low whistle. "Wow, another veteran." His tone was thick with sarcasm, his hands sketching invisible air quotes. "Sure, sweetheart. You'll have to do better than that." Blake lifted his glass, the golden liquid inside catching the bar light. His wedding ring and a thin, worn gold band clicked against the glass. "You see this?" he said, tapping the Navy SEAL trident pinned to his chest. "You earn this by dying 3 times, not serving fries." Emma bent down to wipe the bar, sleeves riding up her forearm just an inch. That's when the room seemed to tilt. Under the flicker of fluorescent light, a mark gleamed against her skin. A scar, but more deliberate than any accident. It was branded into her flesh, shaped like a trident, only this one was inverted, burned in deep like a mark of defiance. "What about dying 4 times? She asked softly. The air thickened. The jukebox in the corner played an old country song about broken promises and long roads home. Blake chuckled, louder than he needed to. 4 times? Hell, that'd make you a ghost." Emma's mouth twitched in what could have been a smile, though it never touched her eyes. "Maybe," she said. No one in that bar knew that in exactly 18 minutes, when the last round was poured and a certain ring placed beside their drinks, their world would shift forever. That night, the Seahawk Tavern would stop being just another watering hole for warriors and become the stage for a revelation that would haunt everyone who survived it. Nestled deep inside Naval Base Coronado, the Seahawk was more than a bar, it was a sanctuary. Its walls carried decades of unspoken stories. Photos of SEAL teams hung in neat rows, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, and a dozen other wars that officially didn't exist. The mahogany bar was darkened with age, every nick and groove a scar from old laughter, old grief. That night it was alive, a chorus of voices in boots and brotherhood. Off-duty SEALs huddled at tables, trading war stories and bad jokes. The air smelled of leather, beer, and that unmistakable mix of adrenaline and exhaustion. Emma moved through it all like a ghost, filling glasses, clearing plates, never lingering long enough to be remembered. She had been there 3 months, long enough to blend in, long enough to become invisible. Blake Brooks, Tank to everyone who mattered, had been coming to the Seahawk for 4 years. Senior Chief Petty Officer, 6'3", 230 pounds of arrogance and reputation. His nickname was born in Iraq, when he'd cleared an entire complex alone. A mission meant for a squad. He'd earned his trident, his scars, and his ego. Tyler Mills was his shadow, fresh out of training, still believing in the myth of invincibility. He hung on Blake's every word, desperate to prove himself. The third man in their circle, Danny Rodriguez, was absent, stuck on duty. If he'd been there, the night might have ended differently. Blake swirled his beer and gestured around the room. "You know what I love about this place?" he said, his voice booming over the music. "Everyone here earned the right to be here. Every single person bled for this country." His gaze landed on Emma. "Well, almost everyone," Tyler chuckled, eager to agree. "Yeah, I gotta keep the standards high. Next thing you know, Civilians will think they belong in here. Emma's hands never paused, but her spine straightened. Subtly, naturally. The shift was so small that only someone trained would notice, but Blake wasn't looking for subtle. Exactly, he continued, encouraged by Tyler's nod. Take our waitress here. Probably grew up in a quiet suburb, right? No idea what a real fight looks like. Now she's here, serving drinks to warriors, pretending she understands. The jukebox changed tracks. The guitars got harder. The air got tighter. Conversations nearby began to slow as people tuned in to the rising tension. At the far end of the bar, Madison Reed, head bartender and veteran of 6 years behind this counter, looked up from restocking whiskey. Trouble had a smell, and this was it. Maybe dial it back, Blake, she said calmly. Emma's just doing her job. Blake turned toward her, grinning without warmth. What job is that? Pretending she belongs here? Emma's rag stopped moving just for a breath, barely a pause. But Tyler saw it. He'd been trained to see what others missed. The micro-reactions that kept you alive. Did you see that? He murmured to Blake. When you said that, the way she moved. Like she was calculating something. Blake laughed again, but it sounded forced now. Calculating? What, how to file a complaint? Emma shifted closer, carrying a fresh tray of glasses. She moved like someone who'd spent her life on high alert. Her steps balanced, her weight forward, her head on a quiet swivel. She was scanning every face, every exit. At a nearby table, Hunter Gray, a grizzled Navy vet with a prosthetic leg and eyes like steel, set down his drink. He knew that posture, the way she carried herself. He'd seen it in combat zones from Helmand to Mosul. If you've ever been underestimated, or mocked for who people think you are, this story is for you. Smash that like button right now and drop a comment about where you're watching from, because sometimes the quietest person in the room has the loudest history. Hunter Gray leaned back in his chair, studying Emma the way a sniper studies the wind, quietly, intently, as if a whole equation of danger was unfolding in front of him. Her every movement was too precise, too intentional. Civilians didn't move like that. They didn't distribute their weight that way, didn't scan rooms like predators checking for exits and angles. The chatter in the bar had dropped to a low hum. Something in the air had shifted, an invisible current that pulled attention toward the blonde woman behind the bar. Blake and Tyler, oblivious to the tension they'd built, pressed on with their teasing, half pride, half insecurity. Come on, sweetheart, Blake said, flashing that cocky smile that had probably worked on every bartender from Virginia Beach to Guam. You can't just drop Fallujah 2014 and walk away. What were you doing there, making lattes for the Marines? Emma didn't rise to the bait. She just reached for a glass, polished it, set it down. Her tone stayed mild. Field hospital. Echo company. Forward triage sector. Blake's grin faltered. He'd been in Fallujah in 2014, the second battle's aftermath, Operation Phantom Fury follow-up missions, the kind of hell that got under your skin and never left. Oh yeah? He said, his voice lower now. Which sector? Emma didn't look up. Grid 32 SMB 578943. The words hit him like a gut punch. He knew those numbers. He'd memorized them. Coordinates of a safe house that saved his team's life. A location that wasn't in any public record, not even in redacted reports. How do you know those coordinates? His voice came out rougher than he intended. Emma's hand paused mid-polish, then continued. Lucky guess, she said quietly. Tyler's brow furrowed. That's not possible, he murmured. Those weren't in any after-action logs. Now the whole bar was listening. Madison had stopped restocking entirely. Even the jukebox seemed quieter, its song fading into static. Lieutenant Ashley Kane, the base security officer, chose that exact moment to push open the door. The heavy oak swung inward, carrying the night's cold air and the sound of distant drills. Ashley was 28, sharp-eyed and unshakably professional, one of the few who could keep these off-duty warriors in check. What's going on here? She asked, scanning the room. Her voice carried authority that cut through the tension. Blake straightened a bit too quickly. Nothing, Lieutenant, he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Just chatting with our waitress about her military experience. Ashley's gaze moved to Emma, who stood calm and still, rag in hand. Is there a problem, ma'am? No, ma'am, Emma replied. Just doing my job. But Ashley's instincts prickled. Years of working security among special operations units had taught her to trust her gut. And right now, It was screaming that something didn't add up. Emma's awareness was too sharp. Her body language was pure training. "Can I see some ID?" Ashley asked. Without hesitation, Emma pulled a driver's license from her apron and handed it over. California State. Oceanside address. Photo matched perfectly. Every detail clean, neat, legitimate. Too legitimate. Ashley turned it over in her hand. Her stomach tightened. This wasn't a fake ID. It was better than real. The kind of document that didn't just pass inspection, it was built to. She'd seen that once before during her time assisting federal task forces. "Intelligence-grade fabrication. Been working here long?" Ashley asked, her tone casual but her mind racing. 3 months, Emma said evenly. Before that, different restaurants. Mostly small jobs. Ashley nodded slowly, filing the answer away. 3 months. Long enough to establish a cover. Before she could press further, Tyler's voice broke the moment. "If you were really in Fallujah, you'd know about the phantom frequencies." Blake frowned. "The what?" Tyler looked from one to the other, eager now. "There were 2 radio frequencies that kept showing up on our equipment, but they weren't in any system. Not in our comms, not in NATO's, nothing. Only people who were there knew about them." The words hung like a trap waiting to spring. Emma's hands froze. For the first time since this began, her composure cracked. Not much, just enough for those who were watching closely. She looked at Tyler, her expression unreadable. "Frequencies 279.4 and 316.8 megahertz, she said softly. They weren't glitches. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the HVAC seemed to hold its breath. Tyler's face drained of color. He'd only ever seen those numbers once, in a classified report locked behind security protocols so strict he'd needed his commander's clearance to even glance at it. Blake's beer slipped from his hand, shattering against the floor. "Those frequencies are classified." Emma didn't look up. "Yes," she said simply. "They are." Hunter Gray, still seated nearby, rose slowly, his prosthetic leg clicking into place. "Lieutenant," he said to Ashley, his voice low and serious, "you might want to think carefully about who you're talking to." Ashley's fingers brushed her radio, torn between instinct and confusion. The woman in front of her looked like a waitress and spoke like someone who'd briefed generals. "I'm going to need to run a background check," Ashley said finally. Her professional tone returning, Emma's eyes lifted then. Calm, composed, and just a little sad. "Of course," she said. "Though you might want to use your secure terminal for that." Ashley blinked. Secure terminal? That wasn't something a civilian would even know existed. Tyler exhaled shakily. "You can't just know that, can I?" Emma asked, her tone light but her gaze steady. Something in the bar shifted again, this time from mockery to unease. Every operator in the room felt it, that unspoken recognition that the person in front of them wasn't what she appeared to be. Blake's knuckles whitened on the edge of the counter.
"Who the hell are you?"
Emma looked him straight in the eye. "I told you," she said. "I'm a waitress." She set down the cloth, her tone almost gentle. "That's all I am now." Her use of that single word, now, carried more weight than a confession. Ashley's hand hovered over her radio again, unsure whether to call backup or not. Madison exchanged a nervous glance with Hunter, who had gone very still. Tyler looked between them all, his mind racing, trying to reconcile the impossible. Somewhere deep in the base, a siren wailed, distant but growing. A signal for something no one yet understood. And behind the bar, Emma quietly stacked the last clean glass in its place, as if she already knew what was coming. The wail of the siren faded into the night, swallowed by the thick walls of the Seahawk Tavern. Inside, the silence that followed was heavier than the smoke clinging to the ceiling beams. For a moment, no one moved. No one spoke. Only the hum of the old refrigerator filled the space between heartbeats. Ashley's instinct screamed that something was wrong, but she couldn't decide whether the danger came from outside the bar or from the calm, almost disarming woman standing behind it. Emma didn't fidget, didn't blink. She just stood there, eyes sharp, every muscle at ease but ready, like someone who'd spent her life waiting for things to go wrong. "You said Fallujah 2014, Blake said finally, voice lower now, stripped of the mocking edge it carried earlier. "You can't know those coordinates unless you were there." Emma's only answer was silence. She picked up a glass, inspected it for smudges, and set it back down. Blake took a step closer, his bulk casting a shadow across the counter. You trying to tell me you're one of us? No, Emma said quietly. I'm not one of you. Tyler's pulse thudded in his ears. Then how? Because I'm something you don't talk about, she interrupted, her tone flat, matter-of-fact. Something that doesn't show up in your records. Blake's laugh was humorless. That's cute. You think you're Black Ops? That's a big claim for a bartender. Emma's eyes flicked up to meet his, and for the first time since this strange exchange began, her expression hardened. You think classified status makes you invincible? You've spent your career fighting enemies you could see. I fought the kind that vanish before you know they were ever there. That landed like a punch. Tyler glanced toward Ashley, who was still holding Emma's ID, staring at it as though it might start explaining itself. Lieutenant, he said softly, you should check it. You'll see. I plan to, Ashley muttered, but her throat was dry. The word secure still echoed in her mind like a warning. Hunter Gray spoke from his corner, his gravelly voice steady as stone. If she knows about those frequencies, she's not lying. Only about a dozen people had access to that intel. I was in one of those briefings. 5 years ago. Ashley turned toward him, brow furrowed. You're saying you recognize what she's talking about? Hunter nodded slowly. More than that. I've seen that scar. Every head swiveled toward him, he gestured to Emma's arm. That inverted trident. I saw a classified dossier once. A briefing on a unit that officially doesn't exist anymore. The mark was their identifier. Blake snorted, trying to reclaim control of the conversation. What kind of unit burns their own symbol into their skin? The kind that gets disavowed, Hunter replied simply. The kind that doesn't come home. Emma wiped the bar again, though her movements were slower now, more deliberate. You should be careful, Mr. Gray, she said softly. You know what happens to people who remember things they weren't supposed to see. Hunter's prosthetic leg shifted as he adjusted his stance. Ma'am, I stopped being afraid of that a long time ago. Ashley stepped forward, her security training pushing through the haze of confusion. All right. Enough of this. Miss Wells, if that is your name, I'm going to need to run that background check now. You can either come with me voluntarily or we can… Lieutenant. Emma's voice cut through hers, sharp and commanding. You might want to use your secure terminal for that search. Not your handheld. Ashley froze mid-sentence. How do you know what I… Emma turned away, wiping her hands on a clean towel. Because I've seen what happens when people use unsecured lines for classified queries. You don't want that. That stopped Ashley cold. Her pulse quickened. Nobody outside the chain of command should even know that secure terminals existed for background searches, and yet Emma spoke of it casually like she was giving bar-side advice. Blake looked between the two women, confused and angry. This is ridiculous. You're telling me this bartender's got higher clearance than base security? Emma's lips curved faintly. Wouldn't be the first time. The jukebox, still on shuffle, switched tracks again. The guitar chords were harsh and metallic, something from an old Southern rock anthem. But the music only made the tension more surreal. Then, from outside, the sound of boots echoed, heavy, coordinated. Coming closer, Ashley turned toward the door instinctively. Stay here, she said, motioning to Blake and Tyler. But Emma didn't move. She didn't even look worried. When the door opened, the glow of hallway light framed a young sailor in fatigues. Lieutenant Kane, he called out, slightly out of breath. Training accident at Building 7, 3 KIA. Commands requesting all senior personnel report immediately. Ashley's radio crackled to life, confirming the message. 3 killed. Live fire exercise. The words hit Blake like a hammer. Who? They're still confirming IDs, the sailor said. Preliminary says one of them's Danny Rodriguez. For a heartbeat, no one breathed. Tyler's jaw went slack. No, that's not right. Blake's hand found the edge of the bar, knuckles turning white. Danny? His voice broke on the name. That can't be right. He was on duty tonight, Tyler finished for him, voice trembling. Emma's gaze lowered to the floor. Building 7, she said softly. I filed a report on that structure 6 months ago. Said the observation tower was compromised. Blake's head snapped up. What did you just say? Her voice stayed calm, but her eyes darkened. That range wasn't safe. I documented it. Structural weaknesses in the main supports. It was supposed to be shut down. Ashley frowned. Filed a report with who? Emma met her eyes. People who don't officially exist. For a moment, no one spoke. The air felt electric, charged with something bigger than grief. Blake's grief twisted into anger. "You're telling me you knew something was wrong and didn't—" "I did," Emma interrupted softly. "But someone buried the report, and now 3 men are dead." Hunter exhaled, slow and heavy. "And I'm guessing one of them was the man who might have started asking questions about it." Emma nodded once. Ashley's radio crackled again, the dispatcher's voice tight with panic. "Base command reports possible sabotage. Repeat, possible sabotage at training range. All personnel on alert." The sound froze everyone. Blake's grief turned to ice. "Sabotage?" Emma's expression didn't change, but her tone sharpened. "You wanted to know who I am, Chief Brooks. Maybe you should be asking who killed your friend." For a few long seconds, the only sound was the hum of fluorescent light. Then Ashley, acting on pure instinct, drew her sidearm. "I don't know who you are," she said, voice firm but unsteady, "but you're going to tell me everything you know about Building 7. Emma's lips parted in something that might have been a sad smile. "Lieutenant," she said quietly, "you're not ready for everything I know." The tension in the Seahawk Tavern had become a living thing, thick, heavy, pulsing between the walls like static electricity waiting to spark. Blake's grief was raw and sharp, his mind trying to process the impossible. Danny Rodriguez, his brother in arms, was gone. Across from him, Emma stood calm and unreadable, her words still hanging in the air like a challenge. "You should be asking who killed your friend." Ashley Kane kept her pistol leveled, but the longer she looked at Emma, the less certain she became. Everything about the woman's stance screamed discipline. Her breathing was steady, shoulders squared, weight balanced. Not defiant, not frightened, controlled. It was the body language of someone who'd been trained to face a weapon without flinching. "Put it down, Lieutenant," Emma said softly. "You don't want to do that?" "I think I do," Ashley countered, though her voice trembled faintly. "You're withholding information about a fatal incident on a military installation." "That's obstruction." "Or protection," Emma replied. "Of who?" Emma's answer was calm, deliberate. "Of the people still alive." The door swung open again before Ashley could respond. 2 more sailors rushed in, faces pale, eyes wide, adrenaline dripping off them. "Lieutenant Kane," one gasped. "Command says range collapse wasn't an accident. Someone tampered with the safety systems." Blake's heart thudded hard against his ribs. "What are you saying?" "The sensors were offline," the sailor said. "Manual override engaged 15 minutes before the collapse." Tyler turned to Blake, eyes wide with dawning horror. "That's when we were here," he whispered. 15 minutes ago." Emma's gaze shifted slightly as if ticking off invisible calculations. 18, she corrected quietly. "What?" Blake asked. "You said 15 minutes ago." "It was 18, Emma replied. "That's when I told you the truth would arrive." The realization hit Tyler first. "You knew." "I knew the timing," Emma clarified. "Not the names." She looked at Blake. "But I did know what was going to happen. I tried to stop it months ago." Blake's grief erupted into fury. "You knew and you didn't stop it?" Her eyes met his, steady, sorrowful. "I did everything I could. The system failed before the structure did." Ashley holstered her gun slowly, her instincts at war with her logic. "You keep talking about reports, about classified information." "I'm running that background check right now." Emma nodded once. "You should. But you won't like what you find." Ashley stepped aside, pulling her secure phone from her belt. She typed quickly, initiating the highest level personnel verification the system allowed. The screen blinked, then flashed red. "Access restricted. Omega clearance required." She froze. "Omega clearance," she whispered. That's Joint Chief's level," Hunter Gray muttered under his breath. "Told you she wasn't just a waitress." Tyler was still staring at Emma. "If you're not a civilian, then who are you?" Emma took a slow breath, then exhaled. "Someone who's supposed to be dead." The words landed like a shockwave. Blake's rage flickered, replaced by something colder. Fear. "You're saying you're one of them. The ghosts. The ones they said went missing in Syria." Emma didn't deny it. She didn't have to. Tyler's eyes widened as the pieces fell into place. "Operation Blackwater," he said slowly. "That was supposed to be a joint task force, classified, wiped from the records after a failed op." "Not failed," Emma said quietly. "Sabotaged. Ashley looked up from her device, face pale. Every member of that unit was listed as KIA, 6 total. 1 unaccounted for. Emma's expression didn't change. That report was accurate. I died on paper. Silence filled the bar, thick and unreal. The jukebox had gone dead. Even the air conditioner's hum seemed to fade away. Blake rubbed a hand over his face, disbelief warring with grief. This is insane, is it? Emma asked. You just lost your teammate because someone tampered with your own safety systems. You think that's an accident? You think corruption doesn't wear a uniform? The word struck a nerve. Blake looked away, jaw tight. Tyler swallowed hard. Operation Blackwater. You were the survivor, weren't you? Emma hesitated, then nodded once. They called me Raven. The name rippled through the room. Even those who'd never heard of it felt its weight. Raven. A code name whispered in rumor among elite units. A myth about a female operative who led missions that didn't exist, who died 6 years ago in a desert no one could point to on a map. Ashley stared at her, voice barely a whisper. You can't be real. Neither were half the missions I led, Emma said dryly. But they happened. Hunter stepped forward, respect coloring his gravelly tone. If you're Ravencross, then the story's true. The operation that went dark, the one where 6 operators vanished, wasn't an enemy ambush. It was betrayal. Emma's eyes lifted to his, the faintest flicker of pain behind them. By one of our own. Blake slammed his palm against the counter. Then say it. Who did it? Emma looked at him with something like pity. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Try me. Before she could answer, Ashley's radio erupted with static, then a voice, sharp and urgent. All base personnel, lockdown protocol initiated. Building 7 under investigation for deliberate sabotage. Possible insider involvement. The words confirmed what Emma had been saying all along. Blake's breath came heavy. This is real, he muttered. This is actually happening, Emma nodded. It's been happening for years. You just didn't see it until now. Ashley holstered her weapon completely, her mind spinning. You said you filed a report. Through what channels? Emma's voice dropped to a whisper. Through a network that answers to no single branch. Created for oversight that doesn't officially exist. Intelligence Division? Ashley guessed. Emma shook her head. Leviathan, Tyler frowned. Never heard of it. You're not supposed to. The name hung in the air, heavy and cold. Hunter's expression hardened. Leviathan was supposed to be a myth. A fail-safe program for black operations oversight. Emma gave a small, humorless smile. Then I suppose you're talking to a ghost from a myth. Blake finally exhaled, his anger burning into something colder, steadier. Resolve. If what you're saying is true, then whoever buried that report murdered Danny. Emma nodded. And I intend to find out who. Ashley's radio crackled again, but she didn't move to answer it. Her gaze was fixed on Emma. You're under investigation, whether you like it or not. But for now, she hesitated, then lowered her voice. For now, you might be the only person here who knows what we're really up against. Emma's eyes met hers, calm and certain. Lieutenant, you're about to learn the difference between loyalty and blindness. Outside, the faint sound of approaching sirens echoed through the night. Base security, military police, maybe more. But inside the Seahawk, everyone knew something deeper had already shifted. Blake glanced toward the door, then back at Emma. What happens next? Emma turned, reaching for a small silver ring on her necklace, a trident etched with faint scorch marks. She set it on the counter beside his drink. The metal glinted under the light. Next, she said quietly, we stop pretending this is about one accident. For a long, heavy moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the distant growl of engines outside the base, security trucks converging on Building 7. The Seahawk Tavern, once a place of laughter, memory, and beer-soaked stories, now felt like a war room. Blake stared at the small trident pendant Emma had placed before him. The metal shimmered faintly under the yellow light, the scorched edges whispering of heat and history. You carried that all this time? He asked quietly. Emma nodded, her voice barely audible. It's all that was left of them. Your team? She hesitated, eyes distant. My family. 6 of the best operatives I ever knew. They died believing they were following orders. Orders that came from someone inside Leviathan. When I realized what had been done, it was too late. They erased us. Ashley crossed her arms, still processing everything, her military posture betraying the storm inside her. And you've been hiding in plain sight ever since? Emma gave a small nod. When they destroy your identity, they don't just erase your file. They erase your past, your relationships, even your purpose. The only way to survive is to disappear. So I became someone no one would ever look for. A quiet woman serving drinks to the same men who still believe the system is unbreakable. Tyler leaned forward, brow furrowed. Then why come back? Why stay here of all places? Emma's eyes softened, though there was a shadow behind them. Because this base is where it started. And because the man who buried my report still walks these halls. Blake's muscles tensed. You're saying someone here did it? Emma looked directly at him. Not just someone. A commander. Ashley's stomach dropped. You can't just accuse a senior officer without proof. I don't need to, Emma said. Proof finds its own way out. It always does. Hunter shifted his weight, prosthetic leg clicking against the floor. You're talking about Commander Weller, aren't you? Blake turned sharply toward him. Hunter, what the hell are you saying? Hunter met his gaze, grim. Weller oversaw Blackwater oversight before it went dark. He was the one who signed the after-action reports, the same reports that declared her entire team dead. Ashley frowned. But Weller's in charge of logistics now, not operations. Emma smiled faintly. That's what they always do. They move the puppeteers to safer desks once the smoke clears. Tyler's voice shook. So, Weller ordered the sabotage at the range tonight. Emma's eyes flicked toward the door. Weller didn't plant the charges, but someone did, under his orders. He's cleaning up loose ends. Blake clenched his fists, rage and disbelief warring inside him. Danny was no loose end. Emma met his fury without flinching. To Weller, everyone who asks questions is. Ashley pressed her palms to the counter, trying to ground herself. If you're right, and I'm not saying you are, we can't confront him without backup. Not without authorization from Command. Emma shook her head. Command won't help you. Weller's too deep. His influence reaches higher than you think. If you report him, he'll have every one of you reassigned or discharged within a week. Tyler exhaled shakily. So what do we do, just sit here while he gets away with it? Emma's voice was low but steady. No, you gather truth quietly. You act like you don't know anything. And when the time comes, you move fast. Blake stared at her, the rage in his eyes beginning to cool into purpose. You sound like someone planning a mission. Emma tilted her head slightly. Old habits die hard. Hunter looked down at his prosthetic, lips tightening. What's the endgame, Raven? Emma's reply came softly but with steel beneath it. Expose the network. Make sure no one else ends up buried under lies. Ashley hesitated, torn between protocol and instinct. You realize what you're suggesting borders on insubordination. Emma met her gaze squarely. No, Lieutenant. It borders on justice. The sirens outside grew louder, closer now. Blue and red lights flickered through the tavern windows, painting everyone in alternating hues of guilt and resolve. Blake glanced toward the flashing light. They'll be here any second. They'll take statements, maybe detain all of us. What do you want us to tell them? Emma leaned in slightly. Tell them what you saw, a waitress serving drinks. Nothing more. Because the moment you tell them who I am, this conversation, and all of you, disappear from the system too. Her words sent a chill down Tyler's spine. Disappear? Emma nodded. Like my team, Ashley's jaw clenched. She knew Emma was right. In certain corners of the military world, silence wasn't safety. It was survival. The door burst open and 3 MPs entered, weapons holstered but ready. Lieutenant Kane, the lead officer said sharply. We need statements from everyone. Ashley straightened, voice steady. Of course, she turned to Emma. You heard her. You're free to go. The lead officer frowned. She's not on our list. Ashley met his eyes coldly. She's a civilian employee. Not relevant to your investigation. The officer hesitated, then nodded and turned to question Blake and Tyler. Emma stepped back, slipping off her apron. Her eyes lingered on Blake for a moment. You have a choice to make, Chief Brooks. You can keep living the myth, or start seeing the truth. Blake's voice was quiet. And if I choose the truth, then you'll need more courage than any battlefield ever asked of you. With that, she turned and moved toward the back door. Her steps were unhurried, almost graceful. No one tried to stop her. Outside, the cold wind swept through the alley behind the Seahawk, tugging at her hair. She paused, looking up at the dark outline of Building 7 in the distance, now surrounded by flashing lights and soldiers in motion. For a moment, her mask slipped, and the exhaustion beneath the steel showed. Then she reached into her pocket, pulled out a small device, a comm unit no bigger than a coin, and pressed it. A soft voice crackled through the static. "Raven, you're off-grid. Confirm status." Emma's gaze hardened. "Leviathan is active. They've started cleaning house." "Understood. Extraction?" "Negative," she said, watching the soldiers move like ants under the floodlights. "I'm not done yet." The comm went silent. Inside the bar, Blake stared at the trident pendant still gleaming on the counter. Madison whispered, "Who was she?" Blake didn't look away from the small piece of scorched metal. "A ghost," he said quietly, "and maybe the only one left who still believes in honor." Outside, Emma, Raven, disappeared into the night, the sound of distant thunder rolling over the base like the echo of gunfire.